It's been a year since the Galwan Valley clash, and after rounds of deliberations, how much disengagement have we seen in eastern Ladakh? What is your assessment of the situation on ground?
Thank you. First of all, it's a great pleasure to be with you on this program. And we are approaching the anniversary of Galwan, which is what we normally relate to the entire issue in eastern Ladakh. So I think we are talking at a very appropriate moment. But as to your exact question, well, there is a disengagement process as per agreement which is going on. We've had 10 rounds of talks between the corps commanders. I think the 11th round should be in the offing any time. The quid pro quo was essentially that the Fingers complex, where the Chinese had transgressed, and the Kailash Range 7 heights on our side of the line of actual control, which we had occupied, which were earlier unoccupied, were vacated. And they were vacated almost near simultaneously, with a degree of trust which was there. But besides that, the area of Depsang, the area of Hot Spring, and the area of Gojra Fort, there appears to have been no progress as far as stepping back is concerned, and the allowance to allow the Indian patrols to approach the concerned patrolling points, which had been accepted much earlier, that seems to be still held up, and I think subject to negotiation. So everything is at the moment being pended. It is put on a slow process, primarily because I think the world is in a reset. You see, the pandemic has still not ended, and much of this is related to the geopolitical situation emerging from the pandemic, the slowing down process of economies the world over, many nations not being able to probably recover as quickly as they felt that they could recover. So obviously geopolitics is all at the moment in a hang situation. And you are also aware that the core center of the international politics today is shifting from the Middle East. The withdrawal of the Americans from Afghanistan, probably by July, which may take place. And it's all looking towards the Indo-Pacific. Now, the Indo-Pacific is all about containment of China. Primarily, it's about containment of China. So China, I don't think is going to be in a hurry to take actions which it may perceive or it cannot at the moment fully perceive as to what their effect is going to be. So I don't think there's going to be too much of a progress beyond what has already been achieved in Eastern Ladakh.
Sir, but do you think somewhere, the places where the banks where Chinese have sort of disengaged, do you think there is a possibility that the Chinese PLA will return to the same spot which they vacated earlier?
Well, let me admit that we may have been surprised when this happened in 2020. Eastern Ladakh was not really the highest of priority at that time. We looked much more at Kashmir, we were looking at Arunachal Pradesh and perhaps like that. And Eastern Ladakh really wasn't in the highest of priority. Today it is. With what has happened with the prospect, it is definitely much higher in priority. Therefore, our focus is there. Our troops are there on ground. The last time the army chief spoke, he spoke about 60,000, approximately 60,000 balanced on the other side and this side, 60,000 troops each side has got deployed in these areas. So, and there are some electronic devices, technology has been made use of for early warnings and things like that. Now, despite all that, if one side wishes to use deception and wants to carry out a surprise, it can always achieve. In warlike conditions, achievement of surprise can always be made somehow or the other. But I think with the experience of hindsight now, I don't think it is going to be easy to come back to those spots and occupy them as such. If the Chinese intend to do it, there may be much faster quid pro quo actions from the Indian side too. So without really transgressing the line of actual control as per our perception, etc., we may actually go for some other actions in certain areas. I'm sure the army would have already thought about those areas, and that will be something which may surprise the Chinese too. So, but under the current circumstances, I don't think anyone really wants to disturb the what is called the status quo as such. Uh, Perhaps relating to the previous question and the response which I gave, everyone is on a wait and watch to see how the pandemic progresses, and thereafter how the geopolitics of the world reset. Then perhaps at the operational tactical level, things will start moving.
So, India and China have signed 5 agreements to address border disputes and confidence building measures from 93 to 2013. How do you view Beijing's mindset and actions to dilute these treaties?
See, the Chinese have displayed one facet of their functioning to almost everyone, and that is that they are not a rule-based society. They are not, they signed something today, don't adhere to it. Now, when the protocols were signed in 1993 and through the 22 meetings that we have had on the border issue, each time we have been also speaking about, and they've been agreeing to it in general, about the requirement to actually delineate the line of actual control as the start point of our negotiations on the border. But the Chinese know that the moment they start delineating the line of actual control, they will start getting committed to paper. And that from there, they will have to show subsequent progress. So they have just refused to budge on it. They have refused to budge on the line of actual control issue. They continue to believe that their 1959 claim line, etc., that is the actual line along which the borders should be set. So they haven't really moved from it. Now, over 28 years, if you really continue to stick to one point and do not adhere to any kind of a change, discussion on a renegotiation or something, obviously the message that you're sending out is that you are absolutely inflexible. And that's what the Chinese are. This is exactly what they've done in the South China Sea, if you see. The 9-dash line, the creation of the 9-dash line there, the creation of the artificial islands to establish their claim lines in those areas, etc. The International Court of Justice has gone against it. They've given a judgment against them, yet they have not adhered to it. Right. So the world somehow seems to be accepting this from China, learning to live with China, except perhaps the United States, and to a very good extent Japan. Right. India will have to perhaps live with this for some time, but at the same time keep urging the international community, and as we progressively become a more active and important player of what is happening in the Indo-Pacific, you will find that the Chinese may be actually forced to come forward and perhaps show a slightly greater positive intent in the negotiations to the border issue. It's not going to happen in a hurry. It's not going to happen in a hurry at all. The Chinese are looking at their future at 2035 and 2049 as the milestones. I don't think they will be in a hurry to do anything on the border with India till then.
Since you mentioned United States, I wanted to know, do you think somewhere whatever is happening or the situation that has been, since Galwan last year is happening because of India's proximity to the United States?
I won't say Galwan is directly related to that. Galwan was really a tactical event which went strategic in a matter of minutes. And this kind of a thing happens very often on the line of control, on the line of actual control, etc. But you're absolutely right to say that India's moving proximity towards the United States, moving away from a level of strategic autonomy, virtual non-alignment, which India has always supported, the concept of multilateralism, and then moving a couple of shades closer to the United States is irking China to a great extent. It realizes China does realize that the containment of China in Asia, which the United States intends to do through its, recalibration of its efforts towards the Indo-Pacific. There are important nations of the ASEAN. There is Japan, there's Korea, there's Australia, but that is all a part of the Pacific. The important nation in the Indo part of the lexicon of Indo-Pacific is only India. That's on a land border and on a huge maritime zone. So India's importance cannot be wished over. And the Chinese are fully aware of this. Before this relationships get stronger, Indo-US relationships get stronger, I think the United States, the Chinese themselves wanted to send home sufficient warnings to India that should they progress with this arrangement of what is called the Quad, the Quadrilateral of Nations, should they progress with the Quad, should they progress with their potential military relationship with the United States, which was getting stronger by the day, the Indians should be careful. They wanted to put a caution on the Indian leadership. They were also irked. I have written a lot on this. They were also irked by the fact that in the last 4 or 5 years in particular, India seems to have shown a propensity towards higher levels of strategic confidence. The cascading effect of the surgical strikes, the Balakot strike, resolving Jammu and Kashmir to a great extent through the Operation All Out, the bold decision taken on the 5th of August 2019. All this has contributed not only to the situation in Jammu and Kashmir, but it has contributed to the projection of India's confidence to the international community. And the Chinese have read this very correctly. And they are perceiving that this confidence may take India to a higher level of confidence, by which it could actually be looking to take back its whole territories and things like that. The Aksai Chin statements on this have been already made in the Indian leadership. So all this has contributed. So there's no doubt about it that the Indo-US relationship seems to be the core center from where all this has emanated.
After what happened at Galwan last year, what kind of lessons do you think our armed forces have learned, and how far have they been implemented since it's been a year now?
Very good question, and very appropriate that we must comment on it at this particular time. In the year 2020, or even the earlier part of 2020, we continued to believe and speak very profusely about the fact that from 1975, not a shot had been fired on the line of actual control anywhere against the Chinese. 1975, we lost 3 or 4 soldiers of the Assam Rifles in Arunachal Pradesh, but that was the last time. We had a terrible engagement against the Chinese at Nathula and Chola in 1967, in which we got the better of them completely. But Sumdorongchu in 1987, there was 6-month to 9-month standoff against each other, virtually face to face, and not a shot was fired at that time. Both stood down, moved back. So there seemed to have been some kind of a belief ingrained in our minds that it's unlikely that it's going to come down to an exchange of hostilities against the Chinese on the line of actual control. Galwan has put an end to that completely, right? Although I continue to believe that Galwan was just a tactical thing, it may not have been planned completely. It may have been something which had happened on the spur of the moment. There are all kinds of theories about what really, how it got triggered off. So we will not go into that. But the important aspect is that the rules of engagement for the Indian Army's soldiers, they must be laid out. And I'm sure that they have been laid out. I've been in touch with a couple of my old colleagues and things that who say that these have all been ironed out. For example, not carrying weapons or things like that on patrol duty on the line of actual control. And if you remember, in the last couple of years, there have been a number of times when there's been an exchange of stone throwing and things like that. The Chinese used ancient weapons to bludgeon our troops during the Galwan standoff. I'm sure these things we are very, very mindful of. And our troops are physically very strong. They, they are used to hardships. They have the kind of stamina. If anyone thinks that the PLA has got any kind of an advantage on the Indian Army soldier, they should think again. Because the PLA's psyche, its training, its leadership is just not cannot compare to them. That is should be very clear to all our countrymen, to the world in general, right? Now that we have been bitten once, and more because of trust than anything else, now that there is a betrayal and there's a lack of trust, the Indian Army will be the last one which will be found wanting in this field. We have the right levels of leadership at the higher level, the middle level, and the lower levels, the strongest leadership, which will respond appropriately at the time and place when it is required in situations such as Galwan anytime in the future.